This video is brought to you by my website, aeroparts.com, high quality, genuine parts. In this video, I'm going to be replacing the starter in a 2008 Honda CRV. Now this is one of my friend's cars, and they ended up reaching out because they went to start their CRV and they got the typical click. However, there was no indication of a low battery. So I came on by and I just so happened to have a breaker bar in my trunk. No, I don't use it to beat people up in traffic, alright? I just happened to have it because my car was missing the lug wrench and I used that to replace it. I ended up actually getting a chance to access the starter in the parking lot where they were broke down, and I was able to give that starter a few solid whacks, which allowed them to start the car and drive it home for the night. Now if you are watching this video while you're stranded, I'm going to show you where you can access the starter anywhere on the go and in a parking lot. All you need is a bar, breaker bar, a long bar to reach up there and whack that starter. Give it a few solid whacks. You might be able to get it to turn over and get to your destination at the very least. But let's just jump right into this DIY guide. Now there's two ways you can access the starter. You can go from above. There's other DIY videos that are excellent. You can check that out. You have to remove the intake manifold, or you can go from underneath, which in my opinion seems a little bit easier, but there's one hard bolt to get, and I'm going to show you how to do that. To get it from underneath, you have to remove the splash guard, which can be kind of a pain. Here are some of the fasteners for the splash guard. I didn't show every single one, but I'll show you the ones that I had to remove to get this out of my way so I can access that starter. Now the splash guard is out of the way and we have a solid view of everything we have going on in here. This is a transmission oil line, so we won't disconnect that. I'm just going to scoot it out of my way. You'll see exactly what I'm going to do with this line. This bracket is going to come out, so I have a little bit more working room. Those are both 12mm bolts. Actually, that's a nut, and then there's a bolt down there. Let's get that bracket off and just kind of push it out of the way. There was some wire harness that was attached to it, so I'm not going to take it out completely. I'm just going to push it out of my way. Now the knock sensor is going to come out. You can probably do it without removing the knock sensor, but I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't recommend it. I just wouldn't want to risk damaging the knock sensor while I'm trying to remove that bolt. But before I remove the knock sensor, which requires a 27mm deep socket, I'm going to show you where the hidden bolt is on the starter. I'm just going to move this wire harness out of the way. It's attached to the starter, so I can stick my camera up there and show you a clear view of what's behind the starter, because you will not be able to see any of this stuff while you're underneath the car. Now this part of the video is why my thumbnail is not clickbait. This is why you are here. This is the bolt that's hidden and it's hard to see. In fact, you are unable to see it completely from underneath the car or above the car unless the intake manifold is removed. But you need to see the bolt. You need to see where its location is so you know how to get it off. This doesn't sit flush with the starter either. It's very long, so I use a deep socket to get this removed. Now I'm going to back this camera out so you can see both of the bolts that are holding this starter on. Here's the other bolt. That's a 17mm. There's only two bolts holding this starter on. It's that 14mm I showed you, and then this 17mm. And then let's back this camera out so you can see where it's located. And so now I'm going to remove the 17mm bolt. I'm actually just going to loosen it, but before I do that, the line is in the way, so I have to remove this 10mm bolt. And I'm just going to lift this bracket out of the way and scoot it out of my way so you can see I have a little bit of flexibility here. There we go, I got it loose, and you can see how I have the wrench to give me some extra leverage. That's an old trick that you will probably need to use here. Now I have my 27mm axle socket to remove that knock sensor. I need a deep socket that's a 27mm. I was able to just crack it loose, and as soon as you crack it loose, you can screw it right on out. Now once that knock sensor is out, I have enough room to reach that rear hidden bolt. The front one is not really going to be an issue, it's the rear one that we need some more room to access. Now there's that deep socket 14mm that I have over that bolt. Now it's protruding out a little bit. I'm able to actually push it in just a little bit more because I'm unable to fit my ratchet over it. Take a look. Now it is pushed all the way in, and it is a perfect spot to get my ratchet in there and break it loose. Here's what we have. We have a 14mm deep socket, and the front one is a 17mm. It's bigger. The back one is longer, and that is my socket setup here. You're going to want to be careful because you have an air conditioning line right here. And if you break it, well, you're going to get a face full of refrigerant. So something that you're going to want to remember here, it's a tight spot. I got the knock sensor out of the way. I guess it can be done with the knock sensor there, but I wouldn't recommend it. Here we go. So here we go. And we got the wrench going right around. There we go. Got it loose. Now from here, we're just going to remove the starter. I did not show it in the video, but there is also a signal wire that you simply unplug. It's right on the top of the starter before you remove it. Unplug that signal wire. And once the starter wire is removed, the last thing to do is to disconnect the power wire. It's being held on by a 12mm nut. Make sure your battery is disconnected before you touch that. And now the starter can come right out. Now here's a close-up view of that old starter and the bolt that's really difficult to see from plain view. Now this is an optional but recommended step. Because that rear bolt is in such a tight location, I highly recommend to make sure that that bolt threads in smoothly before you put your starter in. This is a steel bolt going into an aluminum transmission casing, meaning that this is easy to cross thread. I was initially unable to thread this in by hand, so I had to chase the threads with a 10 by 1.25 tap before I was able to get that in. After I did that, the bolt went in smooth as butter. The technique, I've seen a lot of people complain about how difficult it is to get that bolt, the rear bolt in, and to be upfront with you, yeah, it is difficult, especially if you don't have small hands. The method here is I'm going to actually touch the back bolt with one of my fingers. I'm using my ring finger actually, and I'm turning it just to make sure that the threads are. And I'll get my 14mm in and start screwing that rear bolt in, because once that rear bolt is screwed in, the rest of the job from here honestly is smooth sailing. That's the hardest part of this entire job. That is the rear bolt. That's it. I'm actually going to screw it right now. When the threads are started. The hidden 14mm starter bolt takes 33 foot-pounds of torque, and the 17mm takes 47 foot-pounds of torque. and the knock sensor takes 23 foot-pounds of torque, which is really not that much, so no need to grab your impact wrench, wobbler extensions, and give it all it's got. Now I know almost everybody knows better than to do that, but there's always that one. And that is it. You are done. Just put the splash shields back on and fire it up. Yeah, I like the sound of that. If this video helped you out, make sure to hit like. Also, if you've noticed when I started the CRV, there was a whining noise. This has a leaky high pressure power steering line, which I also have a how-to video for. So make sure to subscribe to the channel and check out aeroparts.com for your automotive parts source.